Hey, what's up, Utah Studies? This is Friday, April 17th. This is Mr. Kais bringing to you the next module in Utah Studies. This will be due, obviously, a week from today, April 24th. We're going to be talking about the Transcontinental Railroad today. But I just want to quickly remind you, if you're struggling to find the textbook pages or the notes or anything, everything's in modules, okay? So come to modules. This is big block letters right here, modules here, or you can use the modules over here. Fact is, let me bring the light, okay, here or here. Okay, so go ahead and click on the modules, and you'll see here at the top of the modules will be your module with the textbook pages, the notes. Right here, which I'm obviously creating it right now, will be the video. Okay, and then this week we have one discussion and one assignment. We'll talk about that in a moment, but let's talk a little bit about the Transcontinental Railroad. Okay, hit present there. All right, so what's going on here is, so we talked about the Pony Express last week. We talked about the telegraph and ways to connect Utah with the rest of the country. The next thing is the railroad. Okay, not only does the railroad connect information, but it also brings people. Okay, now this line right here, this is Omaha, Nebraska, give or take, right here on the Missouri River. The Transcontinental Railroad goes from Omaha, Nebraska, all the way to San Francisco, California. It connects the rest of the country with what we call here the East Coast. Okay. Now, at the time, we're talking about the 1860s here. Everything west of Omaha or east of Omaha is pretty much connected, but nothing from Omaha. This is just like the great open plains. Okay. The Pony Express and the telegraph, that's basically the only way to get information across. And Congress decided that they wanted to, excuse me, I'm one slide too soon. Congress decided that they wanted to connect these areas. They wanted to connect the rest of the country west of Omaha, Nebraska. They wanted to bring the country together. Okay. They wanted to be able to travel from here to there in days rather than months. We're talking about months on horseback where we could go by in days, okay, mere days by railroad. This would obviously change a lot for Utah, okay? More people are going to come to Utah. That's just a fact of life. More people are going to come to Utah because it's going to take days rather than months to get there, okay? But not only more people, but more resources. Whatever could be grown here that can't be grown here, now we'll be able to transport it using the railroad. Okay, so more people, more resources. It's going to change Utah for the better, for the most part. Now look at this map right here. Why is Utah such a big role in this? I'll tell you why. Because there's two companies that build this railroad. The government signs up two companies to build this railroad. Okay. And they are going to meet right here in Utah at a place called Promontory. It's called Promontory Point. Okay. Now, let's talk about these two companies that have been assigned to build this Transcontinental Railroad. The first one is called the Central Pacific, and they are going to start here in Sacramento, California, and they are going to build a railroad across the Sierra Nevadas, the very ugly terrain of the Sierra Nevadas, all the way across Nevada and end up here at Promontory Point. Okay. The Central Pacific Railroad Company started on October 26, 1863. They laid their first rail in Sacramento, California. Okay. 6 years later, 5.5 years later, they finally get to Promontory Point, Utah, and meet the Union Pacific Railroad, which has been coming from Omaha. The Central Pacific Railroad Company laid 690 miles of track across some of the ugliest terrain. Took them 6 years. There's a video that I will probably show bits and pieces of next week when we talk more about the railroad. This shows how ugly that terrain was. Okay. Just imagine trying to build a railroad across like the Blue Mountains. Okay. It took them 6 years to get 690 miles. It was quite an accomplishment. So that's the Central Pacific Railroad Company. That's the first one. The second one was the Union Pacific Railroad Company, and they were contracted to build it from here in Omaha, Nebraska, and they met the Central Pacific or Promontory Point. They started a little later. They began in July of 1865 and met 4 years later. They meet the Central Pacific. Okay. They started a little bit later, but they didn't have quite the terrain to go through. They didn't have the Sierra Nevadas. They laid just over 1,000 miles of track between Omaha and Promontory Point. Grand total of 1,776 miles of track that between the two is what they laid. Now, when they got here, they had what they called the Golden Spike Ceremony. And the last track laid, both companies together laid the last track and drove a golden spike into the railroad to the track to signify their meeting here. And many of you have probably heard of like the Golden Spike Memorial or Monument. It's right here where our country came together from coast to coast. That moment when they drove that last spike and connected those two railroads, it brought our country together. So it was a big event for our country, right? And the event happened there right here in Utah. Okay. We're going to talk more about that a little bit next week. But those are the notes for this week. You can find those notes right here. Okay. If you click on those notes, you'll go right here and they'll be here for your disposal, assuming they pull up, which they're not going to right now because that would be too convenient. Let's talk about the discussion really quick. The discussion is going to be a little different this week. I'm going to actually put a little responsibility on you to do some research using Google or the internet. Okay, use the internet or Google. I want you to answer this question. What were some of the struggles faced by the Union Pacific and the Central Pacific railroad companies in completing the railroad? You can use Wikipedia. You can use whatever, history.com. There's all kinds of sites that'll give you a little bit of insight on that. Just write a simple paragraph in the reply box below and post it. Now, the assignment is very much like the assignment from last week with the Pony Express and the Telegraph, which, fortunately enough for you guys, it's not pulling up here. Let me see if I can pull it up this way. Okay, the assignment is going to ask you to use the information in the textbook, which the textbook is there for you. All right, we're back. Apologize for the delay there. I had to make sure my internet didn't die on me. So the assignment is pretty simple. How did the railroad help connect Utah with the rest of the country? There's a couple links here. There's a link right here, by the way, to your textbook. You can click on that and go right to your textbook. And then you can go back to the next page and you can click on this link right here, which will open up another page with facts about the railroad. And then you'll just go to this Google Doc, which is pasted there in Canvas. 10 facts about the railroad and how did the railroad help connect Utah with the rest of the country. Okay, that's the one assignment. I am not going as deep into the assignments. There's no quiz because I'm allowing you maybe some time to catch up with other things in this class and other classes, okay? We'll get into a little bit deeper next week. Anyway, that's the Transcontinental Railroad. I hope you find this video helpful. If you have any questions, let me know. Godspeed in your journey through the quarantine, and hopefully the weather gets warm so you guys can start hanging out outside and doing things that 12 and 13-year-olds like to do. Anyway, good luck and see you next week.